Samuel had always lived far from trouble. He preferred quiet days, faraway skies, and long rides through open land. He worked alone on a small ranch outside the town of Red Creek. People in town thought he was strange because he spoke very little, but he liked silence more than noisy talk. When he rode home every evening, he usually followed the same trail, watching the sun drop behind the wide desert hills. That evening, however, something felt different. The wind blew hard against his face, and he felt a strange worry growing inside him. He tried to ignore it, but the feeling only grew stronger. As he reached the narrow rocky hills halfway between town and his ranch, his horse suddenly stopped. Samuel felt the animal tense and looked toward the rocks. Before he could understand what was wrong, he heard it. A soft, weak sound, almost like a fading whisper. At first, he thought it might be the wind, but then it came again, this time clearer. It sounded like a human voice trying to call out. Samuel immediately climbed down from his horse. He placed his hand on the ground, listening carefully. The voice came again, trembling, thin and full of fear. Samuel tied his horse to a small tree and slowly walked toward the sound. The rocks in the area were known to be unstable, so he moved gently to avoid making noise. The voice grew clearer the closer he got. It was the voice of a woman. When he finally reached the narrow gap between two large rocks, he stopped. A young Apache woman lay on the ground, her face pale and covered in dust. Her arm was badly hurt, and she seemed unable to move. Her dark hair was tangled, and her clothes were torn in a few places. She looked up at him with frightened eyes. The moment she saw him, she tried to lift her good arm. "Please, careful," she whispered. "The rocks, they will fall." Samuel looked around and noticed that the stones above them were loose. One wrong move could bring them crashing down on both of them. He knelt slowly beside her, making sure not to disturb anything. Her breathing was weak, and she looked exhausted. "What happened to you?" Samuel asked softly, trying not to scare her further. She shook her head slightly. "Later. Not now. Please, do not move fast. The ground is not safe." Samuel nodded. He could tell she was afraid not only for herself but also for him. He checked her hurt arm slowly, trying not to cause pain. The arm was swollen and bruised, probably from a fall. She must have been trying to escape something when she slipped. She kept watching the rocks above with panic in her eyes. "Don't let them fall. Please," she whispered again. "If you move too fast, they will drop on us." Samuel stayed calm. He gently placed a cloth under her arm to support it. Then he looked around to find the safest way out. The path he had used to reach her was narrow, and going back through it could shake the rocks. But he also noticed another path to the right, steep, rough, and dangerous. It led upward toward a small open area where the ground looked more stable. The injured woman followed his eyes. "Not that way," she pleaded. "It is too high. You will fall." Samuel did not answer right away. He understood the risk, but he also knew that staying here longer could be worse. The rocks were slowly showing small signs of movement, and one of them slipped a little right above their heads. The sound made the woman flinch. "What is your name?" he asked softly. "Naya," she whispered. "Well, Naya, if we stay here, the rocks will come down," Samuel said gently. "I need to get you to safer ground." Naya trembled. She knew he was right, but her fear was too strong. "You will get hurt," she said. "Please don't. Please be careful." Samuel gave a slow, reassuring nod. "I'll be careful, I promise." He placed one arm behind her shoulders and the other under her knees. She gasped softly from the pain but did not resist. Her trust surprised him. He lifted her gently and stood still for a moment, listening to the rocks. Nothing moved. He took a quiet step forward. Still nothing. Naya pressed her hand lightly against his chest, not to push him away, but to warn him. too fast," she whispered. Samuel lowered his steps even more. Every footstep felt like walking on glass. The silence around them was so deep that he could hear his own heartbeat. Just when he reached the middle of the narrow passage, a loud cracking sound echoed above them. Naya tightened her hold on him in fear. "Careful," she whispered sharply. "Please." Samuel looked up. One of the large stones had shifted. It could fall at any moment. He had no time to second-guess himself. He paused, calculating the distance to the safer path. The steep route to the right was still an option, but only if he moved fast enough to get past the danger zone. Naya saw his eyes move toward the risky path. "No, don't go there," she begged. "You will slip." Samuel's breath grew steady. He had to choose quickly. If he stayed slow, the rock above them would crush them. If he moved fast, he risked falling and hurting them both. But he trusted his balance and his strength. He knew the slow path would not save them. He made up his mind. Without warning, Samuel rushed toward the steep path, holding Naya firmly. She gasped in shock. "What are you doing?" she cried softly. "No, no, slow." But Samuel did not stop. He placed his boot on the rough stone and climbed with carefully controlled speed. He did not go wild or careless, just faster than before. He moved like a man who had climbed rocks all his life. Naya squeezed her eyes shut, expecting the worst. The rocks behind them suddenly shook. A thunder-like crack echoed. A large stone fell exactly where they had been standing moments before. Dust exploded into the air. Naya clung to him as the ground trembled beneath them. Samuel kept climbing, using his strength to stay balanced, even when the stones shifted. His boots slipped once, but he quickly steadied himself. He did not look back, not even once. Finally, his boot reached flat ground. He stepped onto the safe area and knelt down slowly, gently lowering Naya onto the soft sand. She opened her eyes and saw the fallen rocks below, scattered where they had been only a few minutes earlier. Her breath came fast, and her eyes filled with tears, not just from fear, but from shock at what he had done. "Why did you do that?" she whispered. Her voice was trembling. Samuel sat beside her, trying to catch his breath. "Because slow was too dangerous," he said quietly. "I had to make a choice." Naya struggled to speak. "I told you to be careful. You could have died." Samuel looked at her with calm, steady eyes. "I was careful," he said softly. "Just in a different way." She stared at him for a long moment. No one had ever risked something like that for her. She had been alone for too long, always trying to protect herself. To see someone go against fear just to save her, she didn't know how to understand it. Samuel helped her sit up gently. Her arm hurt, but the rest of her was safe. She looked down at the rocks again and realized that if he had not moved when he did, they would both be under those stones. "You saved me," she whispered with disbelief. Samuel didn't answer. He just nodded and stood up to scout the area. He wanted to make sure there was no more danger before carrying her again. Naya watched him, noticing how calm he remained even after risking so much. When he returned, he knelt beside her once more. "I'll take you to my cabin," he said softly. "You need rest and care." Naya wanted to argue, to say she didn't want to trouble him, but the pain in her arm was too strong. She looked into his steady eyes and felt safe for the first time in days. "Thank you," she whispered. Samuel lifted her gently again. She rested her head against his shoulder, her fear slowly melting into relief. As he carried her toward the open land, the sun began to set, coloring the sky in shades of soft orange. The danger was behind them now, but neither knew that this moment, this single choice, would change both of their lives forever. Samuel reached his cabin long after sunset. His arms were tired, but his steps stayed steady as he carried Naya inside. The warm light from the small lantern filled the room softly. Naya looked around, surprised by how simple and neat everything was. Samuel placed her gently on his bed, which was the only comfortable place he had. He brought her a wool blanket and covered her carefully, making sure her hurt arm stayed still. Naya watched him quietly. She had met many people before, but none had looked at her the way Samuel did. Calm, steady, without fear, without judgment. She felt safe, yet confused by the kindness of a man she had known for only an hour. Samuel moved slowly through the room, placing water near her, checking the fire and thinking about what he needed to do next. Her arm needed proper treatment. He knew how to deal with small injuries, but not something this swollen. "You should rest," he said gently. Naya tried to sit up but failed. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am giving you trouble." Samuel shook his head. "You are not trouble." His quiet tone made her fall silent. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time. She lay back down and closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself relax. Samuel sat on a chair across from her, watching the fire slowly grow brighter. After a while, Naya's breathing softened. She had fallen asleep. He sighed with relief. At least for now, she was safe. By morning, Samuel quietly stepped outside, closed the door behind him, and saddled his horse. He didn't want to leave Naya alone, but she needed help. The nearest doctor lived in town, and Samuel knew the man would not willingly come all the way to the ranch for an Apache woman. But he had to try. He rode fast toward Red Creek, the cold morning air hitting his face. As he entered the town, a few people looked his way. Samuel rarely came in this early, so his presence raised curiosity. He reached the doctor's building and knocked loudly. The doctor, still half asleep, opened the door with a frown. "Samuel, what's wrong? You look worried." "I need medicine and bandages," Samuel said. "Someone is hurt." The doctor raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "An Apache woman," Samuel replied simply. The doctor froze. "Samuel, you know I can't get involved in that," he said nervously. "People won't like it, and I won't go out to treat her." Samuel stared at him silently. The doctor shifted uncomfortably under that steady, calm gaze. "I just need supplies," Samuel repeated. After a long sigh, the doctor agreed and gave him what he asked for. Samuel thanked him and left quickly. But as he walked back to his horse, whispers started. People who heard the conversation began sharing it like wildfire. In minutes, the small town knew that Samuel had taken an Apache woman into his home. By the time he mounted his horse, a few men stood outside the main saloon, watching him with cold eyes. Samuel didn't look at them. He simply rode away. When he returned to the cabin, he was relieved to find Naya awake. She sat quietly on the bed, holding her arm close to her body. When she saw him, her eyes softened with relief. "You came back," she whispered. "Of course," he said gently, placing the supplies on the table. She lowered her eyes. "I thought maybe you would not return." "People sometimes fear my kind." Samuel knelt beside her. "I don't fear you, Naya." She looked at him, confused and touched. He opened the medicine bottle and held her arm gently. She winced from the pain. "It will hurt a little," he warned softly. "I can bear it," she whispered bravely. He cleaned her wound carefully. Naya's face tightened, but she stayed silent. Samuel admired her strength. When he wrapped the bandage around her arm, she finally relaxed a little. "You should eat," Samuel said. "I'll make something." Naya watched him as he cooked. She noticed how quietly he moved, how gently he handled everything in the kitchen. She had expected a cowboy to be rough and loud, but Samuel was nothing like that. When he handed her a plate, she held it with her good hand. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded. After eating, Naya slowly stood up and walked around the cabin, examining the simple furniture, the old wooden table, the tools on the shelf, the little things that showed Samuel had lived alone for years. The cabin felt lonely, yet peaceful. "You live here by yourself?" she asked. "Yes." "Do you not get lonely?" Samuel poked at the fire with a stick. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I am used to it." Naya looked down. "I have felt lonely too," she whispered, almost as if she had not meant to say it aloud. Samuel turned to her. "You're safe here," he said gently, her eyes filled with a soft warmth she didn't expect. Over the next few days, Naya's strength slowly returned. She began helping around the cabin, even though Samuel tried to stop her. She swept the floor with her good hand, washed dishes slowly, and arranged the small pieces of cloth neatly on the table. Samuel tried to tell her she should rest, but she only smiled softly and said, "I want to help." Her presence changed the cabin. Samuel noticed he smiled more when she spoke. He found himself listening carefully to her every word. She told him little bits of her past, not everything, only the parts she felt safe sharing. She had lived through hardships, moved often, and survived dangers he could only imagine. But she spoke with gentleness, not bitterness. Samuel talked little, but whenever he did, Naya listened with full attention, as if every word mattered. But while the cabin grew warmer with their quiet companionship, trouble grew in town. People began whispering more loudly about Samuel harboring an Apache woman. Some were angry, others were simply scared. Rumors spread quickly. Some claimed she was dangerous, some said her tribe would attack because Samuel kept her. None of it was true, but fear often made people foolish. One afternoon, as Samuel chopped wood outside the cabin, Naya came to the doorway with worry in her eyes. "I saw someone near the trees," she whispered. "He was watching the cabin." Samuel put down the axe. "Did he harm you?" Naya shook her head. "No, but he looked angry." Samuel wiped his hands and walked inside with her. The worry in her eyes made his chest tighten. "They will blame you because of me," she whispered sadly. "I should leave." "You're injured," Samuel replied firmly. "You're not going anywhere. But the people from your town—" "I don't care what they think," Samuel said in a calm, steady voice. She stared at him, surprised. "Why do you defend me?" He looked at her for a long moment, but he didn't answer. Instead, he lit the lantern and made sure the cabin doors were locked for the night. When Naya sat on the bed later, she sighed softly. "I do not want to be the reason you face trouble," she said. Samuel pulled a chair beside her. "You're not trouble," he said quietly. "You needed help. Anyone with a heart would have done the same." Naya lowered her gaze. "Not everyone," she whispered. Samuel studied her face, seeing the worry she tried to hide. "Naya, I won't let anyone harm you." She looked up, and their eyes met. For a moment, neither spoke. The room felt warm, calm, and strangely safe. Over the next 2 days, Samuel noticed more footprints around the cabin, signs that people had been watching. He didn't tell Naya because he didn't want her to feel afraid. He worked outside carefully, always keeping an eye on the trees. On the 4th day, as he fed the horses, he saw 3 men riding toward the cabin. They were men from Red Creek. Samuel recognized them instantly. Their faces were stern, their expressions filled with anger and suspicion. Naya sensed something wrong even before Samuel returned inside. She stepped toward him with fear in her eyes. "They are coming for me, aren't they?" she whispered. Samuel took a slow breath. "Stay inside," he said. "Let me talk to them." She grabbed his sleeve with her good hand. "Samuel, please be careful," she pleaded softly. "I cannot see you get hurt because of me." He gently removed her hand from his arm and looked at her with steady calm. "I'll handle it." But deep inside, He knew the situation was much more serious now. The town no longer feared only Naya. They feared the idea of her, and that kind of fear could become dangerous very fast. As the men rode closer, Samuel walked out to meet them, standing firm, ready for whatever would come next. The peaceful days were ending, and both he and Naya could feel it. But neither of them knew that this coming trouble would push Samuel to make an even bolder choice than the one he made under the falling rocks. The sound of horses grew louder as the three men approached Samuel's cabin. Their boots hit the ground heavily when they dismounted, sending a warning even before they said a word. Samuel stood straight, shoulders firm, his face calm but serious. He had known these men for years, Tom Willis, Jed Carter, and Mason Boyd. Usually, they were friendly enough in town, but now their expressions carried something sharp, something ready to stir trouble. Tom stepped forward first. "Samuel," he called out, his voice tense, "we heard things. People saw you bringing someone into your home." Samuel didn't respond yet. He waited, letting them speak. Jed crossed his arms. "We also heard that someone is an Apache woman." His tone was heavy, almost accusing. Samuel kept his voice steady. "Her name is Naya. She was hurt. I helped her." Mason shook his head. "This isn't safe for the town. You should have reported it. You know how things are." Samuel said nothing. He had expected this, but it still troubled him how quickly fear turned men into something else. Tom looked toward the cabin window, though he couldn't see inside. "We want you to hand her over. We'll take her to the sheriff. Let him deal with it." Inside the cabin, Naya stood near the door, her heart racing. She heard every word. Her hand trembled slightly as she held the doorframe. She didn't want Samuel hurt because of her. She wished she could disappear to save him from this moment. Samuel finally spoke. "She is injured. She is not a threat to anyone." "That's not the point," Jed snapped. "People are scared. They think her presence means trouble is coming. Her tribe might look for her. We don't want a conflict here." Samuel's jaw tightened. Her tribe didn't come looking for trouble. She was alone. Tom stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Samuel, we don't want to fight you, but we can't let her stay here." Samuel looked each man in the eye. "She stays." Silence fell between them. The kind of silence that makes the air heavy. Jed's hand twitched near his belt buckle, not reaching for anything, but showing his annoyance. "You're putting us in a difficult spot," Mason said. "You're putting yourselves in it," Samuel answered calmly. Tom sighed, taking off his hat and running a hand through his hair. "Listen, we're giving you one chance. Bring her out. Let us take her. No one needs to get hurt." At those words, Samuel took a slow breath. His voice was quiet, but firm like a standing wall. "I'm not handing her over," Jed muttered angrily. "You're making a mistake." "No," Samuel replied. "I'm doing what's right." Inside, Naya pressed her hand against her chest. She felt fear, but she also felt something else, something she couldn't name. Samuel was risking so much for her. She didn't understand why he would choose danger over safety, but she felt her heart tighten each time he spoke up for her. Tom exchanged a glance with the other two men. They weren't ready to fight Samuel, but they were not leaving without trying something. Jed took a step toward the cabin. Samuel immediately stepped forward, blocking his path. "You're not going inside." Jed scowled. "Move out of the way." Samuel didn't move. For a moment, it felt as if the world had stopped around them. Then Tom finally raised a hand, stopping his friends. "Enough. We're leaving. But Samuel, this isn't the end. More people heard about this. If you don't let her go, others will come. And they won't talk first." Samuel watched them mount their horses. They rode away fast, dust rising behind them. When the sound faded, he stayed outside for a long moment, breathing slowly, steadying himself. The door opened behind him. Naya stepped out, her face pale, her eyes full of worry. They wanted to take me, she whispered, her voice shaking. Samuel turned to her. I won't let that happen. You should, she said sadly. This is too much danger for you. I choose what I face, Samuel answered quietly. She looked at him, her eyes searching his. Why? Samuel didn't speak. Words never came easy to him. Instead, he walked inside and checked the windows to make sure they were locked. Naya followed him, her steps slow and uncertain. Because you are kind? She asked softly. Or because you feel responsible? Samuel looked at her. Because you needed help. Because you were alone. Because you deserve safety just like anyone else. Naya lowered her eyes. No one has ever said that to me. The rest of the day passed in quiet tension. Samuel worked outside, cutting wood and repairing parts of the cabin, always keeping watch on the horizon. Naya stayed inside most of the time, her arm still weak, but her heart more troubled than her injury. She felt guilty for the danger Samuel now faced. When evening came, Samuel sat by the fire sharpening a tool, thinking about the next steps. He knew the men would return, maybe with more people. Fear could turn a group into a crowd, and a crowd into something far worse. Naya approached him slowly. Samuel, she whispered, if they come back, you must let me go. Samuel looked up sharply. No, you don't owe me anything, she said. You helped me. That is enough. I cannot let you be harmed. Samuel put down the tool. I made a choice when I carried you out of those rocks. I won't change it now. But you will lose everything, Naya pleaded. Your peace, your home, maybe even your life. Samuel's calm voice held something strong underneath. Some things are worth protecting. Naya turned away, her eyes burning with emotion she didn't understand. She sat on the bed and wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. The firelight flickered across her face, showing her struggle. Later that night, when the cabin grew quiet, Samuel stood by the window, keeping watch. Naya couldn't sleep. She watched him in silence. Every time the wind blew, he would look toward the trees, alert and ready. She finally whispered, Samuel, come sit. He turned and walked to the bed, sitting beside her. She looked at him with eyes full of worry. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I know, Samuel replied. If I were not here, then you would be alone, scared and hurt, Samuel said. Naya swallowed hard. Her voice trembled. Why does it matter to you? Samuel took a deep breath. Because people should help each other, Naya, not turn away. She stared at him for a long moment, something soft and warm growing slowly in her chest. The night passed without trouble, but by morning, Samuel noticed more signs around the cabin. Fresh boot prints, broken branches, disturbed leaves. People had been there the night before, maybe watching, maybe waiting. Naya saw the worry in Samuel's eyes. She stepped toward him. Samuel, I know a safe place. He looked at her. My people's land, she whispered. The path is difficult, but no one from town will follow. They fear the deep trails. Samuel paused. Your arm, I can walk, she insisted. You cannot stay here. Not now. Samuel looked at the cabin he had built with his own hands. It was his home for years, a place of peace. But now it had become a target, a reason for fear, a place where danger could arrive at any moment. Naya stepped closer. We must go. He nodded. They gathered a few supplies, water, bread, blankets. Samuel wrapped Naya's arm gently and tied it close to her body to protect it. She winced, but she stayed brave. As they stepped outside, Naya looked back at the cabin with sadness. I brought trouble to your home, she whispered. Samuel shook his head. No, trouble followed you. I just gave you shelter. She gave him a weak, grateful smile. They walked toward the woods behind the cabin, where a hidden trail began. Naya knew the land well. She guided him softly, warning him when the ground was rough or when they had to climb over fallen trees. Samuel walked beside her, always ready to help her when she stumbled. At one steep part of the trail, Naya paused. "Be careful here," she whispered. "The rocks can move." Samuel's memory of their first meeting flashed through his mind, the fear in her voice, the danger above their heads. He placed his hand lightly on her back. "I'm with you." They moved slowly, step by step. Hours passed. The forest grew thicker, the air cooler, the sound of town fading far behind them. For the first time, Naya breathed easier. They were heading toward a land where she would not be hunted. But Samuel knew the deeper truth. Going there meant entering Apache territory, a place many cowboys feared. A place where he would be watched, judged, maybe even threatened. But he didn't turn back. When the sun began to fall, Naya led him to a small clearing where they could rest. Samuel covered the ground with a blanket for her to sit. She watched him with eyes full of something tender, something that grew stronger each time he chose her safety over his own. "You should not do this for me," she whispered softly. "I already did," Samuel replied. Naya looked at him, her heart pounding softly inside her chest, knowing that the man sitting beside her was unlike anyone she had ever met. Quiet, steady, brave in a way that didn't shout, but acted. Night slowly covered the forest. They sat close to the small fire Samuel built, listening to the wind in the leaves. Neither spoke much. They didn't need to. Their silence was filled with trust, fear, and a deep connection forming quietly between them. They were far from safe, but for the first time since everything began, Naya felt hope. And Samuel, who had lived so long alone, felt something new, a purpose, a responsibility, and a growing bond he didn't fully understand yet. Tomorrow, they would reach Apache land, and that was where everything would change. Again. The night in the forest passed quietly, but neither Samuel nor Naya slept very well. The ground was cold, and the distant sounds of animals kept reminding them that they were far from safety. Still, they felt a strange peace resting side by side under the tall trees. When morning came, soft sunlight filtered through the branches, painting warm lines across the ground. Naya slowly sat up, holding her injured arm close to her chest. Samuel had already awakened before sunrise and made a small fire to warm her. He handed her a piece of bread and some water. "You should eat," he said softly. She took it with grateful eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. For a few minutes they sat in silence, listening to the forest waking up. Then Naya lifted her gaze toward the path ahead. "We are close now," she said, "but we must be careful. My people watch the deep trails. They do not trust strangers." Samuel nodded. "I understand." But inside he felt a knot of worry. He had entered Apache territory before, but always by accident or for hunting. This time, he was walking straight in, knowing he might face danger. Still, he didn't hesitate. He had brought Naya this far. He could not turn back now. They began walking again, moving through tight paths and rocky ground. Sometimes Naya walked in front, guiding him. Other times Samuel walked ahead, clearing branches and helping her climb when the path grew steep. Even though her arm hurt, Naya moved with quiet strength. Around midday, they reached a wide, open clearing. The trees formed a perfect circle around the sunny space, and the ground was soft with fallen leaves. Naya stopped suddenly. "We must wait here," she said. "My people will find us soon." "How do you know?" Samuel asked. She pointed to the trees. "They always watch these places. They know when someone enters. They will come." Samuel's hand stayed close to his side. He didn't want to look nervous, but his heart beat faster. He trusted Naya, but he didn't know how her people would react to a cowboy walking in with one of their injured women. Naya stepped closer to him, lowering her voice. "Samuel, whatever happens, stay calm. They will listen to me." "I trust you," he said simply. She looked at him with soft, warm eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. The wind carried a slight sound then, barely noticeable, but Samuel heard it. Leaves shifted where no animal stood. A branch snapped softly, too gently to be from a deer. "We are not alone," Naya whispered. Samuel didn't move. He kept his hands visible to show he had no harmful intention. Seconds passed like long minutes. Then, from between the trees, several figures slowly appeared. Tall, silent, watching them carefully. Their faces were calm but unreadable. They carried spears and bows, though none were pointed directly at Samuel. Not yet. Naya stepped forward. "I am Naya," she said, her voice steady despite the fear inside her. "I was hurt. This man helped me." The warriors exchanged looks. One of them, the tallest with sharp eyes, stepped closer. "Naya," he said, surprise in his voice, "we thought you were gone." His tone softened, but his eyes quickly shifted to Samuel. "Why is he here?" the warrior asked. "Why is a cowboy in our land?" Naya looked back at Samuel, then returned her gaze to the warrior. "He saved me," she said firmly. "I fell in the rocks. He found me. He carried me to safety. He protected me." The warriors murmured among themselves. They looked at Samuel again, studying him, judging him, trying to understand his purpose. Samuel didn't speak unless spoken to. He just stood quietly beside Naya, showing no fear, only steady calm. Another warrior stepped forward. "You brought him here? Into our land?" "Yes," Naya answered. "He risked his own life many times. The people from his town wanted to take me. He did not let them. He brought me here to be safe." The tall warrior nodded slowly. "We must take you to the chief." Naya agreed, and Samuel followed silently as they walked through dense paths only known to the tribe. After nearly an hour, the trees opened to reveal a large camp filled with many families. Children played near the river, women prepared food, and elders sat together under shaded shelters. When the people saw Samuel, they grew quiet. Some stood up quickly, others whispered. A cowboy entering an Apache camp was not something ordinary. But when they saw Naya's injured arm and the way Samuel stayed respectfully behind her, their expressions softened with curiosity rather than anger. The warriors led them to a large shelter where the Apache chief sat with elders. He was an older man with calm, wise eyes. When he saw Naya, he rose to his feet immediately. "Naya," he said with deep relief, "we searched for you." She lowered her head respectfully. "I was hurt, but this man saved me." Samuel bowed slightly, showing respect. The chief studied him carefully for a long moment before speaking. "Tell me what happened," the chief said. Naya explained everything, how she got separated, how she fell and injured her arm, how Samuel found her, how he risked himself to pull her from the falling rocks, how he carried her to his cabin, how he faced his own people when they wanted to take her away, and how he brought her all the way here, ignoring the danger to himself. The chief listened without interrupting. When she finished, the elders whispered among themselves. The chief then looked at Samuel. "You entered our land," he said, "but you did it to protect one of our own." "Yes," Samuel replied with quiet honesty. The chief nodded slowly. "Many men say they are brave. Few show it. You have shown it." Naya stepped closer to Samuel. Her heart pounded softly as she waited for the chief's judgment. After a long pause, the chief spoke clearly. "You are welcome here, Samuel. You showed honor. You will not be harmed." Samuel bowed his head, relieved. The people of the camp began to gather around, curious to see the man who had protected Naya. Some offered him water, others thanked him with nods. Children peered at him from behind their mothers. Samuel felt the tension leave his body slowly as he realized they were not angry, they were grateful. Naya was taken to a small shelter where a healer carefully examined her arm. Samuel waited outside, sitting quietly near the fire. He watched the sky slowly darken as the tribe prepared for evening. Everything felt peaceful here, calm in a way he hadn't felt in years. When Naya finally emerged from the healing shelter, her arm wrapped in new cloth, she found Samuel waiting. She walked toward him slowly and sat next to him. "You can stay tonight," she said. "The chief said so." Samuel nodded. "Good." The fire crackled softly as they sat together, watching the flames dance. For a long while, neither spoke. They simply breathed in the quiet, letting the peace settle inside them. Finally, Naya whispered, "I did not want you hurt, because of me." "And I didn't want you to be alone," Samuel replied gently. She looked at him with warm eyes. "You have a good heart, Samuel." He didn't know how to respond, so he simply looked back at the fire. But his silence didn't hide the warmth he felt inside. When morning came, Samuel prepared to leave. He had done what he set out to do. Naya was safe among her people now. He packed his small bag and walked to the edge of the camp. Naya followed him, her steps slow, her eyes full of something she wasn't ready to name. "You are leaving," she said softly. "You're home now," Samuel said. "And you're safe. That's what matters." "I want to thank you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "For everything." He gave a small, gentle smile. "You don't need to thank me." "But I want to," she insisted. "You risked your life, twice. First for the falling rocks, then for your own people's anger." Samuel looked away, feeling something heavy in his chest. "I couldn't leave you," he admitted quietly. Naya took a step closer. Her good hand lifted slightly, as if wanting to touch his arm but stopping before making contact. "Will you visit again?" she whispered. Samuel paused. He hadn't expected her to ask that. He looked at her carefully. "If you want me to." Her eyes softened. "I do." A quiet smile touched his lips. "Then I will come." The wind blew gently through the trees, carrying the warmth of the sun. They stood there in silence, two people from different worlds who somehow found a bond neither expected. Samuel finally turned to leave, but before he walked away, Naya called out softly, "Be careful." He stopped, remembering the first words she ever spoke to him. He glanced back with a gentle look. "I will," he said. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He reached out and lightly touched her hand, a quiet promise between them. Naya's face warmed with emotion. Under the wide sky, with the peaceful land around them, they stood together for one last moment before he took the path home. Their lives were different, their worlds far apart, but both felt something change inside them, a connection, a story that was not ending, only beginning in a new way. And as Samuel walked away, Naya watched him with hope in her heart, knowing the man who once risked everything for her would one day return.